Welcome to Corporate Cafecito,
a Latin and business podcast where we share insights and strategies to help entrepreneurs and professionals thrive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Gas.
Y yo soy Carlos Butler Valle.
Today we have la doctora Wallace, and she is this phenomenal woman who is brilliant. She talks so much about just structure and career frameworks, and part of what is near and dear to our heart is making sure that we provide that kind of encouragement and support to help you, our audience, navigate through your career progression. How she does it, I would say, I'm going to make a joke, but she does it seamlessly because her structure is called SEAM. So, Dr. Wallace, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you and share some experiences and also learn from you both. I'm originally from Peru. I came to the United States to pursue my education, and I will say that I fall in love with the United States because of the different opportunities, and I wanted to pursue my education, and I wanted to be exposed to different disciplines. I was able to do that because I had a teaching and research assistant at the University of Tennessee. So as long as I completed my coursework, I could take whatever class I wanted.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, and I did that. And that gave me a perspective and the ability to look a problem for different angles. After I got my PhD, I was a consultant for different companies. By the way, I taught at the University of Tennessee when I was getting my PhD from 1989 to 1996.
I love that. I cannot name one Latina professor I had. So I love that you taught, and that must have been amazing.
So I taught sociology, social problems, and statistics. And that also gave me a perspective about how we ourselves put barriers, and sometimes our barriers, then we project that to others. Because I do have a heavy accent.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, like in my case, I have a very heavy accent. But I was teaching, and my priority was to provide the information to the students. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't thinking about the accent at all. So I think that was very helpful because then I was authentic to myself. Yeah. And also, I speak with my hands, right? But the students were able to get that information. And I mean, that was an excellent experience to say that we need to go ahead and take risk and share our abilities and our experience with others, and don't project our insecurities.
Yeah. I think we do that a lot, especially when we're speaking. Like I know I've always been sensitive with words with the SH and CH to do the ch and the sh. And so, I've always said a piece of paper because I never wanted to say a sheet of paper. In the
yes. Yeah. So I also wanted to get at the perspective from the grassroots, meaning that I started consulting with nonprofits, and I did that in Louisiana. And that I learned that in order for you to actually have a good strategic planning, you really needed to immerse into the culture. And over there you had the Cajun culture. So I learned a lot about them, and we worked together. And I use a lot of the examples for strategic planning and performance measures based on something that is very popular there, that is the gumbo. And so people can relate to
arroz con habichuelas.
That's right. So then that means that whatever you come out with is going to stick because it's based on your culture. And then, I wanted to work for corporate America. I did that. And you get to see all the bureaucracy, but also you learn about the processes. And I strongly believe that the major difference between a big business and a small one is the structure and the processes. Because people will hire you because you learn those processes in the huge company.
Yes.
That's basically how I got inspired for my book. But I always been interested in transformation. So I created Windrose Vision. Oh, sorry. Before I went to work for the government, and I was the director of performance and evaluation for the National Institute of Health. And so I work a lot with biomedical scientists. And when I left NIH, of course, my first client became NIH. And also I have clients with the National Science Foundation. And it's basically about looking at the program, see how it fits into the strategic planning of the agency, and assessing whether or not the program works and is reaching its goals. We do that with performance measures and see how you make progress. So the most important thing I would say that if you do not have a baseline, if you don't record where you start, it's very difficult later on to come up with whether you achieve your goals or not. So usually the assessment or the evaluation is done at the end and you want to go retrospective. But in reality, a lot of people forget, right? Or you come up with a brilliant idea, but if you didn't do your research and come up with a baseline, then you won't know if you actually made a change. And change is actually through the years, change is something that you achieve, but it's slow, except when it came to AI.
Well, that's actually that's a perfect transition. I was going to ask you. So this is not your first book. This is your second book, right? So you've obviously have already now the title of having an author twice, which is amazing. But, as you were saying that, I was thinking about, well, first of all, really quickly, baselines are important for everybody. And I think that, Nayeli would agree that in the work that they do with Elevar and, some of the work that we do from a culture and engagement consulting perspective, you have to know where you start in order for you to know, the progress that you've made. But, you talk about the quickness of pace, and AI just felt like, for me, certainly as a layperson, it felt like it just came and it came so swiftly. And the adopters have been doing a really great job adopting it, and then some folks are just slowly trickling into the AI elements of it. But one of the things that I keep hearing often is that we don't really have very many Latinos either doing AI or talking about AI. So I was curious to know what caused that desire for you to write your second book, which is called, and make sure I'm getting this right, Thrive in the AI and Digital Age, the SEAM 4-Step Career Guide and Workbook.
Okay, so maybe I need to go back to Peru. So my parents had a vocational school. And in the 1980s, guess what happened? My parents used to teach typing, shorthand, and then suddenly computers came. And my parents couldn't adapt. They couldn't buy the computers and train their new staff. So they had to close the vocational school. And that had a tremendous impact on myself. So I always been interested on these changes, and specifically the changes to technology. So when I came to the United States, I always been trying to research and examine how change happens in organizations. And this type of change that is technology, has never been seen in the history how fast it has changed because of AI. So this is unique. And I'll be glad to connect you with other people, Latinos, who are at the cutting edge of AI. So I think it's very important, actually. This is the opportunity for Latinos to get into those occupations, because that is how we're going to be able to change the socioeconomic status of the community
Well,
by those careers.
The representation is so key, because one of the things that we talk about often, or that you hear about, is the bias in AI. And so when you ask AI, for example, for a picture or a drawing of a strong, powerful woman, very rarely does it give you a Latina, as the image. It typically will give you, say, a white woman as the image, and that's if you ask for it to be a woman. And so that's part of, you talked about getting to things at the root. And that to me, it just really resonated because that is a way that we can absolutely make sure that we're getting at the root of that development.
That's right. And we have the Gen Z generation that is actually very computer savvy, very technological savvy. So there are right now different, I would say, programs. One of the programs that is Conectado and involved, where I'm a mentor, they're trying to actually provide the tools so that the next generation can go ahead and learn and be able to have these careers. So going back to the careers, my first book was about the SIM framework as it applied to companies. Because SIM is a snapshot, envision, act, and measure. And the idea was that, again, if people wanted to incorporate technology, right? Guess what happened? Usually people go, not everybody, but usually people go and say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I want more clients, right? So they start investing in social media and they forgot about their product, or they thought that maybe that's what you're gonna get more clients. So again, maybe the technology that you needed to put in your business wasn't necessarily to go to the social media, right? But it was more about like, look how you processes, how you can automate. So that was the idea of my first book, for business to start reflecting on their processes and making more effective and productive.
Yeah, I love that, because sometimes you have a company, and I've worked at many big companies, and you start something and then that person leaves and then you're starting all over. And you sign a contract with the vendor, and then you have to have the vendor educate you on what you were trying to achieve because the person with the vision left. And I love how easy it is, like, because you're right, the snapshot to me is like the baseline, right?
That's right, yes.
It's where we're starting from. And then I think the most important part is measure, because you have to make sure that we move the baseline, that we made progress. Otherwise, you're still stuck in the snapshot. You're still stuck at the beginning, and you haven't made the progress, even though you've gone through the motion. So I love, we used to call that the thank you, sir. May I have another? Like, we have to show that it worked before we can do it again. Yeah.
No, you're right. And I think what happened is that how we ask the question matters.
Yes.
So we ask the wrong questions. And when we ask the wrong questions, we get, of course, the wrong answers. So in the snapshot, basically, there are a series of questions for you as an entrepreneur to address and look at your processes. And then based on those processes, and also I emphasize 4 areas. You have your finances, you have your customers, you have your partners, and you have your employees. And you need to have performance indicators for each of those 4 components or pillars of your organization. So then you go, right, and you go, as you were saying, it's important to measure. But then on the envision was to actually start addressing those areas that we identified that needed to be addressed. And then, of course, you develop a very action plan instead of just a plan. And then you start acting on that. And of course, you start developing key performance indicators for those 4 areas. So, but again, the idea was, where can you introduce the technology so that you can be more productive, more effective? And of course, that can take time, especially if the organization has not implemented technology, or maybe wants to stay that way. If you want to stay that way, it's fine. So I use the example of a friend of mine who actually makes bread, artisanal bread, and she needed to automate in order to produce more, right? But anyway, so going to that, so then guess what happened? Everybody started going crazy because that was in 2023. Yes. So everybody started going crazy with AI, generative AI. Generative AI then became very powerful. So last year, I said, you know what, I have to write a book now for the careers because
yeah.
and it appeared that nobody knew where to start. So I started writing a lot last year, January, February, and March. And then, I had the book more or less for April, but then I needed to do some refinements with exercises. But the idea was to provide the tools to the people so that we can remain relevant and we can adjust and pivot according to the changes in the market. So think about this. I was writing, and you can see some of my posts on LinkedIn. I guess people thought I was crazy, maybe, I don't know. So I was writing with some other people that also will post, but I really was talking about what everybody's talking about right now. So I was doing that last year, and in July specifically, it was a generative AI was, text to, I guess the videos were not as good, but we have to move that from text to video and text to pictures. But anyway, so the idea was that people didn't know, or now I guess everybody's trying to engage into, where do you start, right? Because there is so much choices now. It's overwhelming.
So many. And this is I'm gonna sound like my mom or like old lady now, but I'm like, oh my God, me están metiendo el AI like on every app. And it's like, would you like to use the AI tools? And I'm like, no. And I know the answer should be yes. I know the answer should be like, learn to leverage it. And my cousin Sergio, who I mentioned earlier, his companies tackle AI, and it's mostly like healthcare forms and legal forms. But he would tell me, just play on ChatGPT, and I go, I don't know how to play with ChatGPT, and so it
Oh
was.
my gosh.
I do now. So
Well, I
real.
was gonna say, friend, we can absolutely, and it's funny, Nayeli, because I had the complete opposite effect. Now, it's interesting for me, the bigger concern was always the privacy concerns, because when I first came into AI, it was actually through work. It wasn't through personal. And so, of course, they were scaring everybody about making sure that you're not putting out proprietary information or anything else like that.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. But I almost sort of took, which is interesting because I like to consider myself somebody who is a late adopter to things. Like I remember I was one of the last people to buy an iPod because I hated that everybody had them. And so, but this was one situation where I said, it feels like the train is moving so fast, and it felt like a bullet train that was moving so quickly that if I didn't even try, it wasn't going to necessarily work. So, and we've explored a little bit. Obviously, I know you're down for it now because we've explored, obviously, some different things to do. But like I said, I just think it's great that a Latina is talking about this because, you're right, there's a void. I want to go back to what Nayeli said, which I think is really key. Nayeli, the fact that you said that you can't even identify a single Latina that was an instructor, that was a professor, and
Yeah,
I think you came here, right? Like you were here in
yeah,
Illinois.
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that is something, there's something there. So obviously, hopefully more of our folks that are
Yes.
listening, if they haven't explored that, definitely through your Seam, through your Seam network, or your platform, they could absolutely take it one step at a time and hopefully see the effects, the positive effects of engaging in that.
Oh, yes, definitely. So what I did was to push people to try. In the book, at the very beginning, in the snapshot, I put like 7 career profiles, and I asked the individuals, the reader, to identify themselves. They self-identify their career profile. And then based on that profile, they are gonna go ahead and do certain activities. But this is just to push you so that you can go ahead and start doing something.
Yeah.
And actually, everybody loves the different career profiles. I didn't realize I would have developed more about it, but everybody loved the career profiles because everybody thinks that, of course, they try everything. They're the skillful navigator. And then later on, I asked them, what are you doing? And tell me the frequency. And then it's like, oh, I thought that, yes, I'm doing all of this. And actually, you did this last year. In the last 6 months, you haven't done anything. So it motivates you to go ahead and try these different things. And I call those that you do that in the vicious step, I call those exploratory sprints. So sprints, in the terminology of developing software, they call the agile terminology. So I decided to use that because I believe that we need to try different things before we commit ourselves to a relationship. To say,
Yes.
okay, now I want to be a doctor, or now I want to become a designer. Wait, how can we expect people to come up with this career vision if they haven't tried the diverse professions or diverse activities?
And sometimes, and to make that decision a los 18, 19 años, when they're going to college, it's like, I applaud this because
Yes,
yes, we need to try different things to see, what is our calling.
that's right. And so what happened is that I encourage everybody that they do their exploratory sprint and it lasts from 2 to 6 weeks. Why? Because if you're just gonna, today I'm gonna do this. No, we need to be able to change our brain because right now it's very fragmented. It is fragmented because of our best friend, right? Our phone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we are unable
I
to
was like,
start
wait,
from.
Carlos is my best friend. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, Carlos, right? Carlos, el mejor amigo.
Yeah.
I try not to fragment her though, but
Yeah. No,
So
but you're
this,
right. Parece que lo tenemos pegado a la mano.
eso
sí.
mismo.
Yeah.
Entonces, what happened is that then how we develop memory or how do we develop the skill is by actually maintaining some behavior for a period of time. And it becomes then second nature to you and you acquire the skill. But why
I
do we
also,
do that? No, go ahead.
yeah. I was just gonna say, I also think no 2 days are alike. I love that you're saying to people, give yourself the time to really realize it because there are no 2 days that are the same. I mean, if I try one activity today and I try one activity tomorrow, or maybe 3 days or a week from now, I might have two completely different reactions to these things.
Oh, yes, completely. And I like that because then it allows you for you to reflect and to say, okay, I tried this for 2 weeks, right? And then, hey, I hate it. So let me tell you from my personal experience, I don't like programming. I know how to program, but I don't like it. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop and I'm going to do it anymore. Actually, it makes me better because I understand the mind of the programmer. And I think everybody needs to understand how AI works. They need to understand about the large language models. We need to know the basics so that then we can use our analytical skills and make judgments. And so by doing the sprints, it's training you because right now we are already in what is called the skill-based economy or the skill-based training or hiring. So eventually, these are one of the predictions. I have written about that. So it's going to be good for me to see in 5 years what I wrote this year.
Like, this is March 2025.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to be very curious because I wrote a lot last year during the Christmas, and I realized I never write during that time because everybody's worried about something else. But anyway, so the thing is that because of the skills-based hiring, we have to learn to adapt and to pivot. So if you have been doing this all your life and then suddenly they bring you what? Okay, now you're going to use generative AI and you're going to start developing now. Instead of coming out with all those long write-ups, you're going to just use the ChatGPT to guide you on this, right? So we have to be ready to adopt, learn, and then move on. And also using our skills. So in my book at the beginning, I have a set of skills that people need to assess, and it's in relation of the technology, the emerging technology of your field, the direction, so that you are not in the vacuum. If you want to pivot, it's the same way. Let's say that you really want to go into that field. You do the same thing. You put yourself into that situation and you try it. And also goes back to once you try, then you are in a better position to make decisions and say, I think that I'm going to stay this path in my career. No, I'm going to do this. Or no, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to try something different. But
You know,
try it, you see, so then you can write your career path. But
I
the thing, oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think that we're so when I had the boys, I have two boys, and when they were little, we used to have the dos mordiditas rule.
That was my
And you
favorite.
couldn't say you didn't want to try something without having those mordiditas. You may not like it, but you're gonna try it. And I think that we lose that sense of trying things as we get older. We get more scared or more hesitant to try, especially with our careers, right? Like, well, I don't want
Oh,
to try it
yeah.
and fail, or I don't want to try this, y que si no me gusta, y ya les dije, and whatnot. So I love that you're talking about this in that same mentality, because we have to keep that exploration,
Yes,
that sense of curiosity.
that's right. Otherwise, we're going to stagnate and then we become obsolete.
Mhm.
So this is the big difference, that this change because of AI, and especially generative AI and what is coming now, we have the AI agents. We have to take personal responsibility on our skills and
Mhm.
learning. So we need to be aware what we know and we don't know. Because
Right.
it's something that, oh yeah, we'll learn it later. Well, if you learn it later, forget it, because now it's something more advanced. So basically in the book, by doing all those exercises, because yes, sorry, but it's homework,
Yeah.
it teaches you to become a lifelong learner. That is the objective, that you will be able to pivot because you already got the skills. It's like brushing your teeth. You already do it automatically. So the purpose of the book, to follow with these little exercises, is for you to learn how you develop a habit. And the habit is to become adaptable, easy to learn new skills. And then also I have what is called flexible goals, or what is called fixed goals. In my company, I have employees that they wanted to work for company X, and they became obsessed with that. That's all they wanted. So it was always like, actually, that is a very fixed goal, but things happen. So, so nowadays we need to have what is called flexible goals.
Yeah.
And in the book, I give the example, a flexible goal, a fixed goal, so that people can go ahead and see, okay, oh, this is what I need to do, as opposed to just have this dream job. Honestly, I was reading about how many jobs we're going to have, and it probably is going to be 18 or more, because things change so fast, right?
Yeah.
And it's not only that you have to adapt, but also we have to evolve. So
Mhm.
I don't believe when people say, oh, I'm going to reinvent myself. No, reinvent is I'm going to change my blouse, right? No, it's actual transformation, is that you change from the inside, and we're
Mhm.
going to evolve.
Right.
So that's why I strongly believe that that's what we need to do.
What advice would you give someone who maybe thinks that it's too late to change, or I've been doing this for so long that the idea of even trying something new, like it's almost crippling.
So this is what I advise everybody. If if you watch CNN every day, today you watch Fox. If you watch Fox every day, today you watch CNN, NBC, you have to do something that it is outside of your comfort zone. And that is the first step,
Mhm.
is actually doing it. So I'm a very action-oriented person. So I don't consider myself a inspirational leader or anything like that. I'm actually more like, hey, well, what are you doing? Because sometimes we go through the emotions, and if we go through the emotions, then we don't do anything.
Right.
But if you actually act, so that's what I don't believe, that we need to pursue our passion. Because passions, they burn and disappear. I think we should pursue our interests, because as we evolve and grow, we change, and our interests change. So that's what it's good to tell people, hey, what is your interest right now in this point in time? But if I tell you my passion, well, um, probably I will try and then I don't like it anymore. Very
Yeah.
few people actually get to do this passion that they have. in a balanced way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's also part of the discovery process. I mean, like, my passions have shifted, and I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I
Mhm.
think the more I learn, I grow, I adapt, I change, I evolve.
That's it.
My passions, they differ, they change, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's part of growth, and that's what I see a lot in the material that you provide is really about this sort of you take a very much a continuous improvement mindset,
Yes.
in terms of the framework that you set up, but really also the way that you write about things. And thank you for that advice. I wanted to ask you, so you and I stayed on a little bit longer when we connected, and one of the things that you shared is, and this is a passion for you, um, is organizational change. And a lot of the work that you've done has been around, helping leaders in organizations figure out how to either leverage this framework or even in your work that you've done in organizational development to really make the type of environments
Yes.
that are needed to allow folks to be able to successfully leverage a seam structure or framework. Can you tell us a little bit about, some of your work there and what you've done and how that also helped align to your books? Because I know a lot of what you talked about is career, but this is more than just careers for
Yes.
you.
You are correct. That means you really got me.
Well,
See,
good.
yes. So the idea is that when we're talking about an organization, an organization is an organism and it has a life of its own, right? So right now we're having AI and AI is changing the organization, right? So what happened here? Um, my biggest concern right now is the upskilling and reskilling of the employees. And this is not something just for HR.
Can you define what an upskill and a reskill is?
Yes. So actually, I like all this discussion because it's relevant for everybody today,
Yeah.
right? So you have these skills, but you need to go ahead and change how you do things. You need to acquire new skills, right? Or you can improve the existing skills that you have. But the approach how you do it, I believe, has not helped the actual employees. And I think it's because most organizations, if you look into different reports, a lot of the training that has been given many times, because there is not specific outcomes, there is no specific measures, it's a waste of money.
Right. And it's a repeat. So you're not even adapting it to the environment you're in now.
That's right. So when we're talking about with the SIM and you look at the snapshot and you're looking at the skills of the employees, you look at it from the perspective that actually now the employee has a voice. And because we're in the skill base, the organization has to do their homework in terms of what are actually skills that the organization needs, right? And
Right.
also look at the people who are currently employed and look at their skills. So they also need to look, but it's also the responsibility of the employee because if they don't, there is not enough resources. So we need to be focusing on the transferable skills. So when people do assessments, think about this, that the assessments are old because the assessments were done how many years ago? Many years ago, 50, 60,
Yeah.
70. Okay, and right now it's new. So we have to look into a different way of looking at the skills. And of course, that skills are not gonna go out of fashion, which is the critical thinking.
So,
They
go
bring,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say they bring critical thinking classes now to grade school.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Which is so important. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I had mentioned to you earlier, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and that's one of the things that we're always, consistently trying to at least show here. But I mean, there's something to be said about making sure that there are environments out there that are also helping to support that level of thinking. I'm going to ask you a similar question to what Nayeli asked you. from a careers perspective now, just thinking about the fact that we're so blessed here at Corporate Cafecito to have such a wide range and spectrum of audience members. We've got everything from CEOs and entrepreneurs on down. So if we flip it on its head a little bit and we think about advice potentially that we could provide to listeners that are leaders of organizations, what's maybe one or two things that you would say to them today?
Okay, so I have written a couple of articles how to implement the SIM framework for upskilling and reskilling. So I think the first thing that everybody needs to do is this issue about the skills assessment and focus on there are actually 10 skills that are not going to go out of fashion. And so that's one part. So I would say very simple on each of them, right? So you do that. And then if you want to provide a training, the training has to be personalized and use AI to actually do the training because it can adapt and it can go ahead and tailor to the specific people. But you
So
always,
I love that.
yes, you
I was
use
just gonna
AI for
say
that.
you're giving people on both sides homework. You're saying if
Yeah.
you are on the career side, you've got your homework. If you are a leader, you've got your homework too, right?
Yes.
Use this to make sure that you are setting up the right environment, leveraging a framework to ensure the conditions are there and to be really thoughtful about what it is that you want to deliver.
That's right. So it starts from the top for the organization. So the leaders have to be aware what is going on and take responsibility for the upskilling and reskilling. And then it changes the role of HR in the perfect world and IT or anybody with technology, because now there are key strategic partners with leadership. So the balance of power, think about this, it's not anymore like, okay, I'm going to tell you what to do. Actually, HR has to work with leadership and also with the technology department. And then is when they can go ahead and come up with this SIM that is actually going to meet the needs organization and see how the individuals can fit within that. And then
Right.
again, it's up to the individual to decide, I'm going to stay or I'm going to go. Because right now we're moving into these AI agents. That will be for another conversation. And I can invite my peers that know a lot about it. So why? Because if you have to take responsibility for what are the trends in my industry, and based on that, you can propose to leadership. And then you are also a facilitator, a contributor, and you are not a passive individual. We have agency. So my point is that instead of complaining, let's take this opportunity for us to go ahead and come up with ideas to improve where we are and take the responsibility to learn about AI and how it's affecting my role.
I'm putting the heart because I love this. Yes. And it's also the first time I do that. But I was like, I need to like signal that this is really important and something that people need to listen to.
Yes. And I think that leaders, remember, leaders are not born. I think they're made, right? So everybody can be a leader, but a leader is responsibility. And responsibilities that right now, think about this. We really, okay, regardless of what's going on outside, we still have the agency that you can go ahead and go right now and learn whatever you want. I mean, if I was in Peru, I didn't have all those choices. I didn't have the selection. So right now, there are all these big companies that are offering free classes for this, free classes for that. So let's explore. Let's do our exploratory sprint before we start complaining about the current situation. I think we need to take action. Action is by going and taking a class and learn something, and it opens our perspective.
Yeah. And you know what? I think a lot of times we get in our head about like taking a class or what that means. I'm like, we could listen. Like, I get a lot from TED Talks. I get a lot from like reading different books. And I'm a horrible reader. I cannot sit with a book. I listen to everything. So, you know, when I go out on my walks, I'm always listening to something. And I think that we have to, what is it? Like, keep getting smarter, keep trying, keep
Yes,
learning
that's
different
right.
things.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to go get another degree. Go
No.
learn something new. And even like with AI, you know, when my cousin's like, just play with it. And I was like, how am I going to learn? And now I'm like, you know, my mom, she's had some health issues this past year.
Mhm.
And I went into ChatGPT and I put, make me a 21-day diet plan based on Mexican food that has no potassium,
Wow.
low sugar, blah, 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 and includes snacks. And it was like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I would have never done that if I hadn't been
I love
pushed
it.
to try something new. So I think we think about it
Yes.
and it's scary, but if you just take little baby steps, you can get there.
That's right. And then you move into the thing about the critical thinking. Then you start comparing and saying, okay, what about this? Does this matches this ask for the source?
Right.
So you see, it's engagement also with the technology. It's not a passive, like, okay, I'm gonna take whatever they tell me. It's you engage, like that's what I do. I check the source. So, and my last thing that I wanted to mention, because in the book I also provide little snippets about my life, and research have shown that if you visualize the process, many times you accomplish more if you just visualize the end. You see, visualization has been like, here it is, you go to the end. But no, then this research, they prove that if you also visualize the journey, you can actually accomplish. And this is very important because we tend to think about the end, right? But we don't think about all the things that we're going through. And
That reminds me of this idea of manifestation, right? And what I one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from this conversation is that none of this is passive. So the act of manifesting of it in and of itself is great, but you're sort of sometimes going straight from the beginning, from the beginning to the end product, whereas what I love about what you're saying is that none of this is passive. You have to engage in some way, shape, or form, and it's that process of engagement that starts to lead you towards more of that discovery. And so um one of the things I love about this podcast is that it's always a great reminder, even for me. I'm sure Nayeli, you feel that way sometimes, just like, we do tend to get into those head spaces. And, and so, but one thing that is true to form for Corporate Cafecito is that we like to have people feel empowered to take some level of action, control whatever it is. And I love everything that we talked about today, because that's exactly what you have put laid forth for all of us.
thank you. And I love how you guys interact. This is very conversational, and that's how we learn, because it's a dialogue, it's discourse. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we miss that point nowadays. We go with the text and we don't have this type of discussions. Or like in LinkedIn, you put a post and then everybody likes it, but there is no discussion. And I
Yeah.
think it will be nice if somebody responds, okay, what are we doing for women? It's the month of women celebration, but what we can do is go ahead and actually, if you have a business, pay them what they deserve.
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead and
Yes.
hire,
We have
other
the Latina
Latinas.
Equity Day. Yeah.
You see, it's action, not just like, okay, we're going to celebrate. No, celebration should be also translate into real action that changes women and changes the status. Or otherwise, it's still going to be this passive interaction, and it drives me nuts because it's like,
Right.
I really want people to comment. I want
Yeah.
somebody to disagree. I tell me, no.
To
Right?
debate. I learn more when people tell me like, oh no, I don't think that's how you do it. I'm like, oh, why? How do you think we should do it? And then but to be open to it. A veces we feel like, oh, it's confrontational, and I'm always like, no, like if you don't agree with me, talk to me about it and tell me why you think what you think, because maybe we're both gonna grow. I love it. And sometimes, but I will say, I don't like people who are confrontational for the sake of being confrontational.
Yes.
Like, come with the point.
That's
Because
right.
I do think that we are limited to what we know, but someone else can know more or know differently, and we have to be open to it.
Yes. So but definitely, I always try to learn something new every day. So my husband, I've been lucky that he's the same way. So believe it or not, sometimes you will think it's crazy, but you have in YouTube, there are little shows, sometimes little, I don't know how he got into that, but sometimes we just listen, like different philosophers and
yeah.
little clips. I mean, they're 5 minutes, and you know what I mean? And they're funny, and you learn something new. So our brain, is start developing more neurons. Actually,
Yeah.
the different chemistry that goes in our brain, just because we learn something new. So I think that's the
Well,
best way.
you just reminded me of our phone fragmenting us. And, one of the things, Nayeli, that I've learned over the years is you can find time if you look for it. So, I particularly have an iPhone and I can see how much time I'm spending on each app, for example, but that's something that I have to actually go and do.
Yeah.
And then that's when I realize I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm spending this much time on Instagram or el Facebook or lo que sea, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I can carve out, if I can find an hour to do this, para ver lo que dicen las tías y los primos y lo que sea, which is also important. I can also make 5-10 minutes to do XYZ. And so leverage those same things that might potentially be fragmenting, to your point, Dr. Wallace, to possibly also be part of the solution, is another, I think, big takeaway for me.
Oh, yes, definitely. So again, this is the book.
I love it.
And I love the exercises. And so it is work, yes, but it's good work. Instead of watching the Netflix show just the whole weekend, just spend 1 hour, 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that if we, even if I just, since I'm really bad at reading, I always say, like, if I'm going to read a book, I read 5 pages a day. And it may take me half a year to get through a book. But I'm like, every day what I learn, what I read, I retain, instead of trying to like get through it and then I don't remember as much. And then sometimes, I try to like make myself take notes so that I can remember it better, because I'm also a learner through writing. But I love
reading with intention. So
Yes.
that's it.
Yes.
Reading with intention. That's it.
So Dr. Wallace, the first book is called The Seam Framework, and that's particularly for business, right?
Yes.
And then the second book is Thrive in the AI and Digital Age, where it's specifically catered for individuals. And then, of course, the work that you're doing through Windrose is more on the consulting end of it as well.
Right.
We'll make sure to include the link to your website. I took a look at it and I know you've got you've got everything on there, from your books to the work that you're doing on there, so that our readers can continue to find you beyond these conversations, and that they can continue to leverage it. And hopefully if people do end up using the SEAM framework, we'd love to hear, always here at Corporate Cafecito, about some of the things that you've done, or maybe even reach out to Dr. Wallace and let her know how helpful it's been.
Yes, I welcome those people from HR.
Well, Doctora Wallace, thank you for taking time, for joining us, for sharing your expertise, your knowledge. I think it's a true gift of love when someone who is as busy and as talented as you gives back and shares with our audience, so that they can get better. We could learn, we can evolve, we could find how to leverage our interests and really make a career out of it, and also just that love of curiosity and growth. So is there anything else you'd want to share before we sign off?
Just do your exploration sprint, or whatever you want to call it. Do something different. Don't be a passive observer.
Yes.
Love it.
Thank you.
No.
I'm very honored to be in your Cafecito, and I hope to see you soon.
Yes, likewise. Thank you, Doctora Wallace. Well, thank you
Gracias.
everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Guest.
Y yo soy Carlos Butler Mate. See you soon.